I am Dustin Baker. We are here to chat about these 4-0 Vikings. That still feels kind of like a pinch me. Like, how did we get this good? I'm going to jump into all of this with our panel tonight with Spitfire Dakota, Brevan, Bane, my habitual Sunday night guest, Saturday nights during the offseason, of course. I want to say one thing in case I forget as a disclaimer. The thing that I hate the most in sports is blown leads. I act like a child when you have more than a 2-score lead and then it starts to melt down. I've become accustomed to it in basketball because that's kind of the norm now. But in football, so if I come across as more pessimistic than I should be, I am still very generally excited about the Vikings. But when they almost lost that son of a bitch today, up 28-0, for about an hour, I was a little baby. So I'm going to try not to bring that over into this show tonight. I'm going to start with Dakota. That's what we do per usual on these post-game reaction shows. You got a blank canvas to say whatever you will about the 31-29 Vikings win over the Packers.
Oh, and we know that I love to yap. I am a professional yapper. That is why you pay me the big bucks, Dustin. All $2. But I said this in the last episode that I was a part of, I think about 2 weeks ago after the win against the Niners. My biggest concern with this team at the current moment is the way that our energy dips down in the third quarter, beginning of the fourth quarter. We had that issue against the Niners, not so much against the Texans, but it really came back to bite us in the ass today. And, I think that I genuinely do not think that the Packers were the better team. I do not think that they should have been that close. I think it genuinely just looked like our defense lost a little bit of steam. It kind of looked like we returned a little bit into that mindset. I can't remember the exact wording where it's like, oh, we have the lead. As long as we can come back, we're fine sort of mentality from 2 years ago. But then I think Kevin O'Connell, yeah, exactly. That sort of like mentality, but then Kevin O'Connell snapped back into it. And I will say I am glad that he is aware that he has that sort of habit and that it is something that he's aware that he needs to work on. I think he even called himself out on it today after the presser. I'm not at all surprised to see that Jordan Love turned the ball over so many times. I've said it on here. I've said it on a couple of different podcasts. I personally believe that Jordan Love is one of those quarterbacks that needs about, I'd say 5-6 games into a season before he really truly gets into a groove. Plus on top of that, with the fact that he's been out from an injury for the last, now this would have been 2.5-ish weeks, break, and hasn't been practicing. That's the other thing that I think going into this, I'm not surprised that he played the way that he did. He did have an insanely good game if you just look at how many yards he got, but the interceptions, the amount of sacks, I'm not surprised at all, just given the fact that his only practicing has been non-contact practice. And if you're me, I would, and you're about to go up against the Vikings, I would at least get 1 game of practice in, regardless on where you're at in your injury, if you know you're playing on Sunday, because we have seen time and time again that this Vikings defensive line does not play. They come to kill, metaphorically speaking, of course. Ultimately, I think some things that went really, really well. I'm glad to see that fear that I think a lot of Vikings fans have, that this is usually when Sam Darnold starts to dip down, isn't going away, although this was not his most impressive game that he's had with us, still a fairly decent game. I'm glad to see that Jordan Addison was not hindered by his injury. I think the extra time off because of the injury was well suited. I personally do not think he should have gone in the game against the Giants, but that's past us now. I'm just really excited to see what happens when TJ Hawkinson comes back in. I'm hoping that Dalton Reisner can, be healthy sooner rather than later, because there is a specific offensive lineman who I don't feel like I need to name, who could probably sit for a little bit. I think we all know who exactly I'm talking about, but ultimately, I'm glad to see that the team knows where their sort of flaws are. I'm glad to see that they know exactly how to adjust and fix those flaws. And I mean, I'm not mad. I was texting with my mom the whole time. She's like, well, this is where we blow it. I'm like, I'm not worried. She's like, no, we're going to blow it here. I'm like, I'm not worried. I'm still not worried. I had us at this point in the season, I had us at 3-1 losing to the Texans. And then I adjusted it to have us lose today, and we didn't. So not to quote Paul Allen, but of course I'm going to quote Paul Allen, where I don't see a win. Or excuse me, I don't see a loss. I don't see any more wins. That's it. That's our ceiling. No, I don't see a loss. I don't see a loss.
I was after watching Jordan Love for the first hour, and then watching Justin Herbert play for the Chargers, I am flabbergasted these franchises are putting their 50, $60 million quarterbacks out there. I thought, okay, if Love's back, that means he's good to go. And from the onset, you could say, God, he's still a little hobbled. So I don't know. Maybe it's because Kevin O'Connell and the medical staff for the Vikings just slow rolls injuries into like overall generalized security to make sure everything's good. But it's so weird to me early in the season, these guys who are banged up are playing. Not my problem, though. Brevan, so we got to 4-0. A lot of drama in the last hour and a half of that football game. You have the blank canvas for Packers Vikings.
So I wanted to kind of piggyback off your pessimism, just real quick to get it out of the way. I share the sentiment on that, but the peak of my anger came when they allowed the first touchdown.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I got so mad. Like 2 years ago, we were getting mad at the Vikings for allowing scores with 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Now I'm getting mad that they're allowing points in the first half. So it just felt like completely unneeded. Yeah. I would probably be even angry if I had a parlay that would have hit and I hit I might have hit 6 legs and the seventh was Aaron Jones scoring a touchdown and he didn't do that and I would have won 500. Maybe theoretically I would have won $500, but that's okay. That didn't happen. So, fun fact: the Minnesota Vikings are the first team in NFL history to defeat 3 playoff teams from a year ago in a row without trailing for a single second during them. It's unreal. I know you wanted to win today by more than you did, especially after the first half, which I'm not the most religious guy. I'm trying to figure it out. I thought about praying for Jordan Love today because I didn't understand why they were playing him from the jump. I was texting my friend there's no way. You would think he's good to go, but there's no way he's good to go.
No, he was not.
100%. So, and he still came out. The Packers offense still put up 500. I think it was 465 on the total yardage. So, and most of that came in the second half. But it goes back to I think I said a couple weeks ago after the 49ers game, the team is allowing yardage like the 2022 team. Yet this is the worst best defense of all time because they're allowing teams to get down the field. They're just up by 28, so the teams go for it on fourth down and they don't get it. And then these teams are racking up stats in the second half, which you can't call it garbage time because the Packers were in the game with 10 minutes left. So I don't know. I'm happy. I wish. Look at us. Like a month ago, we were like, man, I wish this team would blow other teams out. And now it's like, man, I wish this team would finish the blowout like they've done for the rest of the year. So I don't know. It's kind of a champagne problem, I guess. But 4-0 on to London. Yeah, that's about it. I'm happy, but it's also like that pessimism is there. Like, wait, could he just win by 2 possessions?
So if it was up to me, which it is not, I would rather the Vikings and Packers for 3 hours go back and forth, and then it's 28-28, and then the Vikings win 31-28. I cannot stand every fiber of my soul. I cannot stand melting down from 28-0 to survive in advance. It bothers the shit out of me. The good part of that is we finally had a brush with adversity for these Vikings because everything had gone so well. The 49ers game, there was nibbles at it, but it never felt like today where it was like, oh my God, they're going to lose this, aren't they? I think because it was the Packers at Lambeau, there was a tangible feeling that they're going to find a way to bungle this, and then we're going to be the butt of memes for however long. Not my sole motivation there, but I would have rather it be a slugfest, but that's just not the way it worked out. So I think I did have 1-3 at this point on the schedule, starting to peek ahead when everything softens up. But instead, they're 4-0. They're now, let's see, depending on how tomorrow night goes with Seattle, it could be just the Vikings and the Chiefs left as the undefeated teams, if I'm not mistaken.
Just
There
as
you
we
have-
predicted.
Yeah, the Bills just lost. I just turned off the game. The Bills have officially
Yeah.
lost this game against the Ravens.
Yeah, they had their first turd of the season. That's probably going to happen to us at some point where nothing clicks. So this is a good point of reference to remember that it's not all peachy. But when I look back on it, the muff punt by Jalen Naylor was kind of the moment where all you had to do was catch the ball, man. I still don't understand why the other team can't score a touchdown when there's a muff punt. Like, glad it didn't happen today, although they scored like 5 minutes later. It's such a weird rule. But that really felt like the momentum that some people don't believe in sports. It just everything turned. It was like, oh, this thing's going to get close again. But I don't want to dwell on that. I thought Sam Darnold was marvelous again for most of the game. Jefferson catching the tiptoe third down that they had to review to figure it out. That is why that guy makes $35 million. There's probably only 3 or 4 receivers in the world that can make that catch. And if you ever wonder, like, why are we paying wide receivers so much money? It's plays like that because he was the straw that stirred the drink there.
Can I admit something on that?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen that play.
Oh, yeah.
So I was at work. Like, I was able to watch most of it. I swear to God, the plays I don't see are like some of the most pivotal, unreal moments of the game. Because it happened with like in the 49ers game a couple times too. But like I was listening because I have like an hour 20-minute drive home from work, and I was listening to all the press conferences and stuff, and they were bringing up that catch. I'm like, what did I miss? So
Yeah,
apparently there was a cool catch.
Yeah, it was Chris Carter-esque. Got the toes down. They immediately called it incomplete, and then when Jefferson got up and signals the catch, you just know if he's telling the truth. If he caught it, you can tell when a guilty wide receiver just kind of flips the ball back, and they're like, "Yeah, I didn't catch that." But it was for certain he caught it. So I am delighted that they are 4-0. The point differential is right there with I think the Saints are still at plus 57, and that is always the mark of a good team. All right, I want to jump into 3 more things with you guys. I'm going to go with you, Brev, at the top of this one. Last week, I joked because we were flirting with being pretty good because we had just spanked the Texans. I said, did you daydream about the Super Bowl? You said, hell yeah. Now you went on the road at the Packers. It was commanding for a little bit. What else do you need to see, Brev, to believe that the Vikings can win the Super Bowl? Is it like 8-0? Is it full health, Hawkinson back? Like, if you're a 4-0 football team that has just beat 3 playoff teams, it is reasonable to glance at the Super Bowl and not have it be like, we're going to laugh about this because it's the Vikings. It just is. So what else do you need to see, Brev? Is it sustainability, consistency? What do you need to see to believe that the Vikings can get to or win the Super Bowl?
It just needs to be consistent from here on out. And if you were to ask me if I thought about the Super Bowl again today, hell yeah, I did. I'll say hell yeah again, especially in the first half. It just needs to keep going. And I understand the level at which Sam Darnold is playing quarterback right now. It's almost MVP-esque. I still, I need to see Sam Darnold keep doing it. Just because we haven't seen it yet to this point, and it's year 7. And again, I'll say he was kind of thrown to the wolves going to New York. But luckily, he's seeming to catch on. He's going to get a bag somewhere. But I just need to see it keep going. As much as I want to say he's going to keep on the pace for throwing 40 touchdowns this year, eventually I think that's going to drop off a little bit, and that's fine. But I tell Pete, or I said, I think last week, if you don't think this team can at least like think about the Super Bowl, you think they're not legitimate, you think it's because of Sam Darnold. And I'm kind of like tasting my own medicine on that, because if I weren't to think that, it's just, I guess, and I'd even say like the casual mindset that Sam Darnold is the quarterback. And it makes it sound like I have no faith in Sam Darnold. I do. And it's more I have faith in Kevin O'Connell to keep this thing going. But I got to see consistency. I know we've talked about the 2016 5-0 start, and this team is much better than that team. It's not even close. But that does linger in your head a little bit, to where I was like, okay, we started 4-0. What's the percentage of teams that start 4-0 and go to the playoffs? And you remember 8 years ago, you were one of those that didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So that definitely is still there a bit. But I don't know, this team, it really is sustainable. I'm not gonna lie, the total yardage, that's not everything, and it's complete. There's context missing in that when you just look at box scores, and the total yardage thing does scare me a bit, because there's gonna be weeks you probably can't overcome that, because there's gonna be different context to why there is that yardage. But I mean, right now, still, like, if you just take the 4 weeks, the first quarter, which is a good sample size for what a team probably is. This is where we start to find out who's good and who's fake. Unless you're the 2022 Vikings, you find out you're fake the first week of the playoffs. Like we all knew, but we didn't want to say it. But yeah, I need to see consistency from him. The thing needs to keep rolling. Kevin O'Connell himself said there's things that need to be cleaned up if they're going to keep playing at this level. And luckily, the schedule gets a little bit lighter. We passed the gauntlet, and we went 4-0. So I don't know. If you look at the first 25% or whatever, it was 17 games, a little less than 25% of the season. The Vikings are, I'll say it again, the Vikings are currently the best team in the NFL. And it's crazy for me to say. If you don't use projection in it, I feel like you even could use a little projection in it, but just what the Vikings have been doing, even with the kind of little meltdown they had today, they have been the best team in the National Football League. So
I am over any it's Sam Darnold fears, mainly because he has the arm to keep going. Most other backup quarterbacks or journeymen like this, you're going to eventually encounter the warts, like Josh Dobbs. You're going to, oh boy, he can't quite make that throw, huh? Well, that's where his limitation is. You don't have that with Darnold. The only thing that separates me at all from saying these guys are good enough to get to the Super Bowl is that they're the Minnesota Vikings. And I know how it feels to get excited about a team, and all you guys, everybody watching this does. So it's just Vikingsism that makes me go like, yeah, something bad's going to happen. That's the only thing that separates me from saying these guys can do it. The only other thing I need to see from the team is to play when you're from behind. They haven't even had to do that. I don't know if Sam Darnold can cook when they are down 17-3 on the road at wherever. I think he probably can, but that's the one thing this team has not encountered is playing from behind when some other team came out hot and just slapped him right in the face. So I don't want to see that happen, but I'm sure it will. And when they do, I hope they respond. That's what I need to see. Darnold has shown me now in 4 games that he can make these throws. He's got better pocket presence than Kirk Cousins, and that's why a lot of these plays are extended, especially on third down. So that's where I'm at. It's fear of what the Vikings usually do, and at some point, it's not going to be all sunshine and rainbows. You're going to have to play down, probably on the road somewhere. Dakota, what else do you need to see?
Kind of going off of that, we play Seattle at home, or we play the Seahawks in Seattle. I should say, to make it more clear. And obviously, we all know how we feel and the history about the Vikings playing in Seattle and how well that goes. For me right now, I kind of, not to quote an internet meme, but there are 2 wolves inside of me almost. There's the one that is, the optimistic, queen of positivity that everyone knows me as. It's like, hell yeah, like we can do it. We're 17-0. We got this. We can do this. And then there's the part of me that, looks at this analytically. And I think for right now, kind of, I agree with you guys. Like I would like to see them try to come from behind on the road. And I think that's why I brought up the Seattle game, is because I feel like that will be our first real opportunity to see that. But that's not until week 12. I don't think that they're going to lose to the Rams, knock on wood. Hopefully my grandparents don't hear me say that.
I think that's like week 15, isn't it? Like
that's late.
12.
That's my birthday. That's like week 15.
Yeah.
For sure.
Oh.
Yeah. That's cool. We're gonna playing from ahead that whole time, baby.
Yeah, pretty much.
Exactly. But I think for right now, I want to see how they do in London. Like you guys said, we're starting to get to the point in the season where we are seeing who's the real deal and who isn't. We just saw the Cardinals lose to the Commanders. We just saw, the Jets lose a game. The Eagles are not doing as well as they probably should be, or that we all expected them to be, minus me, who knew that they were going to have issues because they don't have Jason Kelce, but a conversation on that later. I think for me, the biggest litmus test for this Minnesota Vikings team is going to be how they play against the Lions after the bye week. I think that is truly because, we have seen throughout the season just how much that atmosphere can really affect a game. We've seen it last season. And so I think if Sam Darnold can play a good game, at that point, it doesn't matter if they win or lose in Detroit. I personally have them losing there. But if they can play against Detroit at home and play decently, I'll be convinced. I want to see how they do at an away game atmosphere, whether it's a win or a loss. I don't even care if they're losing and they try to come up from behind. For me, it's if they play decently in an away atmosphere, regardless on the outcome of the game, I'll be convinced that they can go to the Super Bowl, because ultimately that is what a Super Bowl is. If you think about it, it doesn't matter if you end up being the home team, because ultimately you're playing to whatever fans are able to afford those tickets. So it could be a majority of Vikings fans. It could be a majority of, Bills, Chiefs, Ravens, insert your AFC team here fans, or it could be, whoever made enough money to go to the Super Bowl.
I want to make it clear that my non-production value answer on what I need to see from the Vikings to go to the Super Bowl and be comfortable saying they could go to the Super Bowl is I need to see the Minnesota Vikings go to the Super Bowl to be comfortable to say that they're going to the Super Bowl, because it all ties back to like they're the Vikings.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
and
I literally said to my grandparents, I was like, I don't think I would, like, if they get to the NFC Championship game, I don't think I would even be alive for them to go to the Super Bowl. If they win the NFC Championship game, I would just die right then and there. I would never get to see them go to a Super Bowl because I would be dead.
Well, I thought Green Bay was going to find a way to get the onside kick. That's how I guess rotten my brain is when it comes to those situations, that they were going to be the first team since like the rule started to kick it straight up in the air 12 yards. Everybody gets a job. I thought there was going to be some type of shit that was going to happen, and then you knew that Braden Narvison was going to hit a field goal. So Brevan and I have this shared football philosophy that we developed separately, that when a team loses the week before, they're usually hell-bent on vengeance. If they're good the next week, I don't think the Vikings are going to win in London. I think that they are going to carry over that second half Vikings and just be kind of like, oh, yeah. I think there will be a pinch me moment in London because the Jets need it more badly. I don't think the Vikings will come out and look like garbage, but that's kind of where I'm going to draw my line in the sand, that it's not going to quite be 5-0. I think they will lose. So that's an example of me bringing this team back to earth. The last thing I want to ask you guys about, Dakota, goes back to the schedule. These last 3 games were supposed to be Murderer's Row. And I think most fans, if you sat down and crunched the numbers, thought we'd be 1-3, 2-2 at best. They are 4-0. When you start to glance at the schedule, you have the Rams week 7, and then the teams after that, like the Colts, they're beatable. Even with Richardson, he can't throw quite yet like we thought he would be able to. The Titans, the Jaguars, really. The Cardinals, I thought would be decent this year. They're 1-3. Like, the schedule is not daunting after we got over this hump. Now, next week won't be easy. The game you circle the Lions certainly won't be easy, but we're getting to that point on the schedule where even when we thought we were a mediocre team, we're going to rattle off some wins. So what do you make of this schedule that it has been utterly conquered during Murderer's Row?
Well, first on your point about London, I think the winner of that team is whoever does their time in London the smartest. And what I mean by that is who gets there sooner rather than later and does practices there as early as possible, who's acclimating their guys to the hour change and whatnot there sooner rather than later. And we know from the past that Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi almost instantly jump on that. And so I think personally that's why I believe that the Vikings will win in London. And based on the articles that have come out since Aaron Rodgers has gone over to the Jets and how horrible the management and the coaching has been, I don't think that the Jets are capable of being as nice to their players as Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi is, but I digress. I actually, going into Murderer's Row, I had us coming out of this into the bye 4-1, our only loss being against the Texans. But I mean, again, I'm different than a lot of Vikings fans in that I come into every single season very, very optimistically. I was one of the first on the Sam Darnold hype train, being like, okay, like I see where they're going with this. I think I like it. But that was also, back when I was, maybe it was like me and Thor and like 2 other people who were like, nope, it's JJ McCarthy. It's JJ McCarthy. But regardless, I don't see a loss. Maybe against the Lions, maybe against the Seahawks. Maybe I talk too often to Paul Allen, but I have us going, if by week 18, at the end of that week, I have us as a total of 14-3. I had us at 13-4, but we won against the Texans. there's just something in the water. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. Something feels different. And the reason I have so much belief and so much faith in this Vikings team is for one reason and one reason alone. That 58-yard field goal that we kicked for absolutely no reason and made. The fact that the Packers, of all people at Lambeau Field, missed 2 field goals. That is why I have faith in this Minnesota Vikings team. That is why I am not scared looking at this next stretch. I think that's why I'm not so intimidated. And I have us 14-3. Our next loss, if we do end up losing at all, if we don't lose in London, is going to be the Detroit Lions in week 7. But I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I don't care. Call me a bandwagon. Call me not a fanatic. I'm not scared. I'm not scared for London. I'm not scared for any of these teams except kind of Seattle.
Brev, she has 14-3. I haven't sat down and done this exercise yet this afternoon. I would not come up with 14-3. I think I would be 12-5. Definitely losing to the Bears once, Lions once, and I don't know what the other 3 would be. But that might just be my pessimism seeping in. What say you about the schedule? Now that the real difficult part is behind us, Brev, take us off the air.
I would be right there with you in the 12-5 to 13-4 range, and that's not to say I can't see this team going 14-3 or 15-2 if they keep blowing out playoff teams. But I think that's going to come to an end eventually. I'm not saying I think they're going to walk in and get beat by bad teams. I mean, I think they'll definitely lose to a team or two that they should beat. And that was a point I wanted to make a little bit earlier that I thought about while you guys are talking is. It sounds crazy because they've been dominating the 49ers. They blew out the Texans. They made the Packers embarrassed, we'll say, for at least a half on television. I'm really interested to see how this team plays when they're playing bad opponents. Because being like surrounded by Steelers fans my entire life, the Pittsburgh Steelers, I don't know if it's a Mike Tomlin thing, but like they have always played down to their competition, play down or play up. And the Vikings have kind of been that way a little bit. So I kind of want to see like when we hit that infamous AFC South stretch, I think 3 games straight against the South. I'm really interested to see how they come out of that. Which I know it's crazy to say, like, we just came out of a 3-game stretch. We just came out of our gauntlet and came out with like a 33, 36 point differential and went undefeated. But the NFL is going to be such a different place in 2 months when that's when the around when that stretch of games happens. So so many different things could happen. You kind of have to be safe and say, there's going to be some injuries. That's unavoidable. There's already been injuries. We've already been missing Ivan Pace for 2 weeks. We've already dealt with Jordan Addison being gone. Hawkinson's been gone. Of course, that's the last season injury, but there's going to be injuries. There's going to be teams that get hot. Teams are going to cool off. The Vikings could be one of those teams. So I think 12-5 in that range, 11-6 is pretty safe, but I would love to sit here and say 17-0. I cannot do that. In faith, cannot lie to you like that. So, I would say that 11-12 win range, which I mean that's crazy because my ceiling for this team was 10 wins going into the year, and now the floor is 10 wins. So just crazy props to Kevin O'Connell and the staff for what they've done.
Also, remember, a week from tomorrow is when Jordan Addison, I believe, has his legal resolution or court date for his thing. So we might have him for, I don't know if they'll suspend him in the middle of the season. We'd probably get Hawkinson back in the meantime, so he'd take some of those targets. But I'm telling you, this offense, the Super Bowl caliber when Jordan Addison is playing, because Jefferson is the standard, but Addison is not crazy far away from Jefferson in terms of pure talent. And Addison's only going to get better. Addison on his own team, if he wasn't a knucklehead during the summer, is on his path to getting 1,300 yards by himself. And I love that dude, and I hope that he figures his shit out because he can make this Vikings offense so good for the next 3.5 years before he's got to get paid too. All right, we'll talk next week about 4-1 Vikings or 5-0 Vikings. That will be. We'll have plenty of hours to decompress it because it's on at 8 a.m. Central in the Twin Cities. Anyhow, all right, you guys have a wonderful week, and we'll talk to you soon. Okay.
All right.
Have a
All
good
right,
one.
later. See ya.